I don't think anything was scarier to me than when they were actually explaining what was happening. Because for those who don't know the story, like, actually, I'm going to run down the road while I tell this too. Um, for those who don't know, like in 2019, I started becoming aware of time missing from my day. Like, where I'd be like, wait, wasn't it just 2 o'clock? How is it 5 o'clock? Like, what was I doing? Was I painting? Was I drawing? And I wouldn't see anything around to suggest that I was doing anything that would take up time that quick, like that I would get so focused on that I would lose time. Like I didn't have a laptop in my hands. I wasn't writing. I wasn't sitting at the computer. Like, and then there was a time where I was walking Echo, but the last thing I remember was being inside. And I was just like, I'm out, and I didn't think nothing of it at first because I'm like, oh yeah, I just probably just walked him. He probably needed to go potty, but it started like that, and then eventually, um, after over the course of 2 years, 2021, I think, I lost an entire week, and the only reason I knew that was because I had talked to a friend and said like, oh hey, thanks for the movie last night, and he was like, movie, and I said yeah. He's like, dude, we saw a movie last Thursday. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, today's Friday. He goes, yes, it's Friday 8 days later. And I'm like, what? Because I don't normally do that. If I go hang out with someone, the very next day I like to text them and say thank you. Like, hey, I had fun. Thanks for hanging out. I was like, what do you mean 8 days have passed? And that's when things really started to spiral. And then when Echo passed, I think that the grief kind of shattered whatever was remaining of the barrier between me and the others. I had lost my best friend, my service dog, a dog who literally saved my life, not just by being in it, but by turning my head during a seizure so that I wouldn't, choke on my own tongue and stuff. I mean, literally, because live alone. So I was heartbroken that I could not save him, and it happened so suddenly, and I was scared, and I hated myself for not being more attentive to him. I was blaming myself, and I still wasn't eating, and I started to shut down. I didn't want to go back to work, even though we needed to work to pay bills. And so the others were like, we gotta come out, like, we gotta step up, because he's not going to eat, we're going to starve. He's not going to work, we're going to get kicked out. Like, so if he's not going to take care of himself, we got to do it. And so I had all these boards, because at first they thought I had early onset dementia, and that's why they thought I was forgetting things, or they're like, oh, maybe it's aneurysm related, and your mind is deteriorating in this way, and we'll keep an eye on it. And that's originally what they thought. But then we learned what was really happening, and we learned that I was already diagnosed with it when I was 20, and that just our family didn't tell us. So, or they did, and and I either didn't hear it or dissociated, didn't want to hear it, didn't want to hear the truth, wasn't allowed to hear the truth. So I don't know. I don't know if it was actually held, or if it was, like I said, if I just couldn't register the times that it was brought up. But I mean, there was a good gap there where me and my mom didn't talk, though, for a while, actually. So that does explain that time period, why it wouldn't have got brought up. So it was just, I don't know. So hearing it, I thought, well, I only know this from some movies, and in all those movies, the people are crazy. So I think we should just commit ourselves, and you guys just put us in a room somewhere, and just, so we're not a harm to anybody. And they're like, this isn't what you have. Like, you don't have what people in those scenarios have. Like, yes, this is going to be hard. Yes, this is going to be full of struggles and obstacles. It's probably better when you were oblivious to it. It's probably what your brain needed, was a side of you that was oblivious to it to continue to function without some of the stress and hardships that this comes with. And that's probably why you exist. But now that you're seeing through the veil, and being accepted into the system, like, you should, here's what you need to know so that you don't go to any extremes. And it scared me. It really did. And it's still, sometimes I get scared by the thought of it, to be honest with you. Um, like Mark and Steven? Oh, yeah, in what way? I mean, I guess, yeah, Steven had no idea, right? Um, he had no idea. And that's kind of like one of the reasons Blue wanted me to watch that show so badly. Because, of course, I read comics. I know who Moon Knight is. And I knew about his, diagnosis and stuff. But he was just never a character I was overly interested in. I'm like, yeah, he's cool. He wears white. He took that dude's face off. Bushman. Now I know it's Bushman. But then I just knew basics about him. Just enough to, like, win a trivia contest for Marvel. I knew he appeared in Werewolf by Night and stuff. But, yeah, I always wondered, like, I mean, not wonder, but I always, like, that show was what Blue watched, and he was like, you got to watch this. He goes, because this actually is pretty neat. Like, this character kind of, in a way, reminds me of you. He works at a gift shop. He's kind of a nerd. He's kind of nebbish. He's not really good with women. He's got some similarity. He's not a one-to-one, connection, but he was just like, but he also didn't know he was part of a system. He goes, I think you should watch it. And he's like, I think it'll help you accept more. And although I was already on a path of accepting things, because it was hard to ignore it at that point, once I saw, it was like Tony Robbins sat me down and said, look for red. I looked for red. I came back and he says, all right, now tell me everything that's brown. And I could actually tell him everything that was brown. I could actually see what was really going on to an extent, and start to accept it. And it did. It felt like that a little bit. Like, the hug between Mark and Steven was a big moment when I saw that. Because I'll be honest with you, I've never really practiced self-love before. Not ever. Like, I'm not nice to myself. I know online I try to be nice. I like being nice to other people. I actually hold people in high regard, with their flaws and all. If I feel someone's trying their best, I accept them. Even if I don't agree with them on topics or issues, if I think they're doing their best, and if I feel like they're not a bad person at heart, I will be there for them if they need me to be. But I am not nice to myself. I just don't. My internal voice before has never said nice things about me. So this idea of being accepted by these other alters and how kind they can be to me, was awesome. It was like a voice in my head actually saying nice things for once. Yeah, and Moon Knight does a really good job of DID representation. I agree. It's certainly not perfect. They have to have cinematic license and liberty in it. Certainly my eyes don't roll in the back of my head when I switch or anything like that. Like, you have to do things visually, though, so audiences can understand that a shift is happening or something. You want to cue them that something's going on. So those make it imperfect, but the characterization interpretation is amazing. And I think what was really nice was that you watch the show and you start with an alter. A lot of times when you start these movies, you're with the main host, and the alters are something extreme, something that's trying to kill someone, or something, like in the case of Identity or in Fight Club, or a Sybil or something. I'm sorry, Split. You have these extremes, and it's not always like that in a system. A lot of times, system is just about protecting the entity that they are, and preserving innocence if they can, and separating um, memories if that's needed, and it makes things complicated, but it also is like it's there to protect. It's your brain's way to protect, and that show does a really good job of that. You are 100%